Hey everybody, Aaron here, and you know what? It's about time I've done this. I haven't done this in a long time. Um, Probably last year, maybe I want to say even before that, I did a top 50 anime of all time. That was to celebrate. I forgot exactly what that was to celebrate. I think it was like maybe when I actually finally hit 100 subscribers or something like that. Or was it 50? I don't know if it was that small of a number. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I did a top 50 anime of all time, and that was what I figured, at the time was my favorite stuff. And of course, time changes, in terms of like what you watch, you find stuff that really kind of worms its way in your heart and changes your opinion of something or maybe changes your top listing. And I'll tell you right now, I had a big change with a lot of the shows that I've recently watched, and more so also I've rewatched a few shows and I realized, you know what? I think that these are my top 10. So for now, this is definitely going to be my top 10 for a while to come. Unless something comes along that kind of shifts it again once in a while, that does happen. But it's very rare because these are the shows that for me are, super important to be in the top 10 spot. These are the ones that have earned their rights to be there for me. Now, I'm going to say that right now because I have to keep saying it just so people understand it. This is my opinion. These are my opinions on what I feel are the best anime I've seen. Now, not all of them, if you go to my mal, you'll see a 10, like a 10 out of 10 type score for them. They either have maybe like a 9 out of 10 or even sometimes an 8 out of 10 with a few of these shows. And the reason being for that is because it does lack something in terms of maybe me keeping it from a perfect score. However, I still consider it so great or so amazing that I feel like it's deserved some reason to be here in my top 10. Maybe it's made me cry. Maybe it's invoked some kind of emotion. Maybe months and years later, I still think about it. Maybe I've seen it a whole bunch of times, which, there are a few shows on here. I'll tell you which ones they are that I've seen more than like 6 times or 7 times. I'll be honest with you. So I want to get this out of the way right away. I want to start with my honorable mention, which is Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop at one time did hold my top spot. It was one of the top 10 anime I've watched, and it's not there obviously anymore. Now it's under that. But the thing is that it will always be, I think, somewhere around the top 10. I have never seen something really push it so far away. It wasn't ever my like top one type anime, but Cowboy Bebop was something that I watched and I've seen like maybe 5 or 6 times, to be honest with you guys and girls. I've seen it subbed, I've seen it dubbed a whole bunch of times. I've seen it with my dad, I've seen it by myself, of course. And it's one of those shows that you watch and you can watch over and over again and always get something new out of it. You can always find some cool action about it. All the characters like Spike, Jet, Faye, and Ed are all fun characters that really have something to bring to a story. And it's very rare that any anime has where every single character brings something to the table. And this is an older show. I mean, this came out in the 90s, and it was rare for back then for a show to really do stuff like this. I mean, the whole concept of, bounty hunters in space, etc., was never really done before. It's the concept, space has always been done, and they've had bounty hunters in space in other mediums, but really never in anime. And Cowboy Bebop came around and did something that was really incredible and different for its time. It's honestly something I always tell people, if you want to watch an older classic series, you can't go wrong with Cowboy Bebop. It's something that I think you'll always find some way of enjoying. All right, starting this list off, number 10, Dusk Made of Amnesia. Now, many of you will be like, wow, Dusk Made of Amnesia, it's not the perfect story. I would never say it's the perfect story. It is a romance story, of course. It's got some supernatural elements to it. The whole concept, of course, is this ghost girl that the main character ends up finding, and she ends up kind of wiggling her way into his life. And, of course, there's various other things that he finds out about her. There's some creepy, disturbing moments where, she kind of loses her mind because she's a ghost, and she falls into like a darker state at certain points. But at heart, this is a romance story through and through, and it's very, very, very dark, but it's also beautifully well done to the point that I've cried every single time the ending sequence comes on. I've rewatched it a whole bunch of times, even when I got older, because I saw this when it originally came out, and even as I got older, I never not cried with the last sequence. Like, the last sequence always makes me tear up, and I never, ever stop crying with it. Like, it's always such a great scene and a great moment. But this show, yeah, while it does have its flaws and while it does have its issues with characters and stuff like that, some characters aren't well utilized, and there's some issues with the story, pacing, and stuff like that. This is only 12 episodes long, 13 if you count the OVA. But honestly, I always enjoy watching this. I never found myself going, oh man, I feel like I've seen this like a million times. No, I always watch it again from beginning to end, and I'm like, wow, that was great. I can't wait to do it maybe next year or the year after. I mean, I typically watch this a lot during Halloween or during some time within the year, and I'm probably gonna watch it again this year. I'll probably watch it just for the hell of it. But the thing is that for me, feel like this is definitely one of those shows that has kept its place in my heart as being an important show to show that not every single romance show has to be like your typical cookie cutter concept. I know a lot of people go, well, she's a ghost, how could the main character get with that? That's not the point of it. The point is that, he wants her, but at the same time, he knows he realistically can't be with her forever because she is a ghost. But he's going to try his best to fall in love with her, and he does fall in love with her, of course, as the series progresses, and she falls in love with him. And there's some, it's kind of twisted in its own way if you think about it, because of the fact that, yeah, they can't do regular things. They'll try to, but they will never be seen as a regular couple, of course, because no one for the most part could see her. I mean, some people could kind of see her, but no one could actually see her because she doesn't exist anymore. She is a ghost. But I'll tell you, it's such a great story. You cannot go wrong with the show. If you're looking for a different romance story, definitely go check out Dusk Made Amnesia. Number 9, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Now, I am not fully completed with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I'm on the, I believe, second season, second part, because it's Stardust Crusaders Part 2. And the thing of the show, though, is, here's the thing. I've never, ever seen a show that every single episode I've seen feels amazing. There's something awesome that every single episode brings to the table. And it's very rare that I ever saw an episode so far, probably, the 60 episodes I've seen or 50 episodes I've seen of the show so far, that I go, oh, I feel like this is getting old. Now, Stardust Crusaders, it has some moments where I feel like some of the characters are a little off. To be honest with you, like I have issues with like Polnareff as a character, for example, but that's not what makes me stop watching it. Like I don't not watch it because of that. It's not. I'm watching so much shows right now. That's probably why I'm not completed with the show already. But the thing is that I love every single moment of the first season, and the second season just brings more joy to me. This is a show that honestly, I wish I would have started when it first came out, because I did not know how great this was. I always judged the book by the cover in this concept, where I looked at the cover of this, I looked at like all these weird images and these weird poses people were doing, and I'm like, that just looks stupid. And then I watched the first episode, I went, oh, this is not bad. Second episode, oh god, this is awesome. Third episode, oh my god. Fourth, fifth, it continued on. Even when I went to the second season, I'm like, wow, these characters are amazing too in their own right. They all have these quirky concepts to them. It's indeed a bizarre adventure to watch. But it's so great. It's so colorful. I love how every season changes the style slightly, so this way it kind of represents the time period it's in, but also to show a difference in style and story. I mean, like, one thing that's big shift is the first season, the second season, you see characters very different. But even the first season, after the first 10 episodes, you see characters in a whole different limelight of how they're drawn and how they're animated. I love the openings and closings. I love how they kind of make these homages to all these great 80s and 70s singers. I mean, there's stuff like, you see Dire Straits in there. You see, of course, like stuff from the Beatles and stuff like that. You see some great concepts with characters, and I think that's rare for a show to do. I mean, even the ending songs are songs that are from the Western audience. I mean, of course, you have the first one of the first major endings, which is Roundabout by Yes. That's awesome. Walk Like an Egyptian. I'm not a big fan of that song, but that's still awesome in its own right. That's a song that's being used. That's pretty cool. I mean, that is something that's so rare and so unique to a story, and I love every single second of the story. It is indeed a bizarre adventure, but it has somehow became something that I feel I could rewatch over and over again, and it's crazy because I'm not, like I said, I'm not done with the show, and I just rewatched the first 13 episodes with my friend because I wanted to get him into the show. I rewatched them, and that was only after like 2 weeks going by that I just watched the first ones, and I did not mind rewatching it then. I've never done that with a show before, never. To say that the least. I've never seen a show so fast before over and over again, and this is one of those shows I can do that with because I have found myself watching the second part of the first season over twice now technically, and I love it. I love every moment of the show. It is so freaking amazing. You can't avoid this show. I'll tell you, I said that so many times because on purpose. I just want you to say you cannot avoid this show. Really, check it out. You will not be disappointed. It is a great show. And number 8 would be Gurren Lagann, which, you know what? I think a lot of people are always surprised that I have this on my top 10 list, It's something that a lot of people go, how is it that you have all these weird shows? I mean, like, because, I mean, I've done, like I said, I've done a top 50 and my top 10 from then to now is slightly different in many ways. But a lot of times people are very surprised by my mixture of shows. The thing is that, yeah, I am a huge romance fan. I tell people my main genre is, of course, romance. I look for romance in anime before a lot of other things. But it does not mean that I won't watch shows if they don't have romance to them. And I will always watch shows that I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Because you know what? A lot of times people don't do that. I want to see everything that's there. That's why I have 700 shows watched, because I'm willing to go and watch something that maybe might turn off other people, but I'll be like, yeah, let me sit down and watch it. Let me check it out. Let me see what is so bad about it or so great about it. And Gurren Lagann, I was the same thing with this, where I remember I watched this while it aired, but I didn't watch it as soon as it aired. I like watched I want to say up to like I think episode 10 or something like that is when I finally started getting into it. But I started watching this and I was like at first, what's so great about this? I mean, I love the art, I love the animation, everything like that. It really was cool in concept, but I didn't see what was so spectacular about it. And then I noticed every week I followed the show, and I found myself waiting and waiting for every episode to come out. I'm like, oh, I can't wait till episode 12 comes out. Oh, I can't wait till episode 13. I can't wait till the next part of. Oh my god, I can't wait to see what happens next to Simone. I can't wait to see what happens to Yoko, Kamina, etc. I was always at the edge of my seat watching every episode, and I just wanted to see what would happen next. And you know what? Gurren Lagann is a weird fucking show. I'll say that right now. Excuse my French for saying that like that. But it is one of those shows that you cannot explain to someone very simply. You know, you could say, of course, it's a mecha show, and it is a mecha show. But you start talking like in the nitty-gritty about how they take a robot head and use that for another robot, and they slam that together, and then he uses his drill to implant it to the robot. You explain that stuff to people, and people are like, what the hell are you talking about? What are you on? Are you okay? You know, and it's weird. But the thing is that it's so weird that it's great. I mean, besides the animation being great, besides the voice acting for both English and sub, because I've seen the show multiple times. I've seen it in both English and Japanese sub and dub. The thing is that, besides all of that, besides the music being epic, this show has a place in my heart because it's something that really showed the world that anime can be really weird and yet still amazing. I mean, very similar to Bizarre Adventure, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. That's a very weird show, but I feel like Gurren Lagann showed it first, where it showed like, hey, here's how weird we could freaking be. I'm not saying that, of course, one of the shows came out before, because, JoJo came out way before a lot of other shows, technically, in terms of, like, the manga and all that stuff. But, a lot of shows, of course, use the concepts of JoJo, and you see it probably at every show. You probably see it in this show, too, to be honest. If I actually now examine it, I'd probably find a whole bunch of JoJo references and poses and stuff like that. But it showed the world that mecha could be something that was against the usual grain of something. Where, mecha had always been the same concept of giant robots fighting each other, and, these teen angsty pilots piloting robots just because they had to enter a war. Gurren Lagann was always about showing something different. There really was no reason per se for any of these people to fight anything. They fought because they wanted to at one point, and then they fought because they kind of had to. But there was really no reason for what they did. And all the time, the epic fights always became these things that were like almost caricatures of other mech fights. I mean, the final fight between Team Gurren and the actual Spiral stuff, you have a giant robot that's the size of the galaxy fighting a freaking robot. Dude, when has that ever been a thing? That, I blew up my mic by doing that, but guess what? It's so true. Honest to God, this show is so incredible. It is something that I always tell people, if you want something different, that it really is different, if you want a mecha show that tries to be unlike the usual mecha concept, you really have to watch Gurren Lagann. You will enjoy it, trust me. Moving on to the list at number 7 is Higurashi. Now, Higurashi is definitely the M-rated show of this list. I mean, a lot of these shows have a lot of violence and stuff like that so far, but this is definitely one of the shows that I tell kids not to watch. Even if you're a young teen, make sure you have your parents' permission to watch this show. I don't want to be like any parent that's, start commenting, how can you let little Jimmy watch Higurashi? That's terrible. He was scarred for life seeing some girl's nails being pulled off in a horrible way. Yeah, Higurashi has some messed up scenes, to be honest with you. Now, the reason why Higurashi is number 7 on my list is because Higurashi has become one of the shows that I consider one of the best horror anime out there. And I know a lot of people tend to disagree with me on this. I have people that do side with me, and I know a lot of people say, no, it's not. There's a lot of inconsistencies, etc. You have to realize that Higurashi is kind of already a giant inconsistency with one another. The whole concept is that every arc of the story is separated into a new character being the murderer. Every arc has some purpose to, say how things go horribly wrong for these characters. And then, of course, the season is separated between, first season being a questions arc, which you're going to ask all the questions. You're going to be like, why is it that keeps, like, episode 3, all of a sudden everyone's dead, then episode 4, everyone's back to life, You're going to ask all the questions. Who's the murderer? What's really going on? And then the second season goes and goes, hey, here are the answers to that. Here's why everyone's murdering each other. And here's why time's relooping and showing you a clean slate after every several episodes. This show to me has a little bit of everything to kind of mix, and a little bit of, joy at times, a little bit of comedy, and a little bit of messed up horror. Because Higurashi will always treat you to something new. Every single arc, every single character shift, you will always find something slightly different in terms of how they act. And it's very rare for Groundhog Day type anime to kind of do that, because a lot of times when they do stuff like this, there's always this kind of shift, and it's like always the same stuff that's going to happen. Like, oh, point A to point B, essentially, in story concept. Higurashi doesn't do that. It goes to point A to point B, but it takes kind of curved lines at times. Like, it goes, okay, well, if a character did this in the first time, going through this story, let's have the character doing this instead. Or let's have the character talking about this instead. And, there's always something that's always there to kind of make the character stay the same in terms of what makes them tick. But at the heart of the show is something that's always slightly different. And that's why I feel Higurashi is definitely worth being on number 7 spot. And number 6 is Steins Gate. Now, Steins Gate is one of those shows that I know a lot of people are going to be like, wow, that's that high on your list? Like, how the hell is Steins Gate so high on your list? I mean, I've met a lot of people that love and hate this show. Like, I've never really actually met anyone that says in between, like, oh, it's okay, or I find it okay, or it's all right. I tend to meet people that either go, I love Steins Gate. Steins Gate's like the best show ever, ever made. And then I meet people that go, I hate it. It's the worst show ever made, and here's why, and this is why. For me, Steins Gate literally is, I'm the middleman with this. I think that this show is very well executed, but I also understand why people have issues with it. And that to me will make it where I still love the show. Like, don't get me wrong, I am one of the people that love the show, but I also take things in an objective manner, because the concept of Steins Gate is very weird, and there is definitely some stuff that you'll have issues with, because it is a very time travel-esque anime. There's a lot of scenes where things feel like they have to be explained to you to understand every little concept. And at the heart of the show, there's a lot of science and stuff for you to fully invest yourself in to understand everything that's going on. But if you're willing to put out all that knowledge, if you're willing to put all that kind of, let this show take you in, and let this show build around you a story that is very different from a lot of other shows, you will find that Steins Gate is definitely a great and amazing adventure. The whole concept of Okabe Rintaro building a machine out of a very simple setup of a microwave oven and, just a very little tiny, like, radio headset type thing, and able to now transport it to different time periods, or even using his cell phone at the same time in conjunction with that to input a time period to go into. These sound like outrageous and very odd ideas, but you know what? It's so cool how they execute it. It's so cool how every little thing he does has the butterfly effect, the concept of changing everything by killing or hurting a butterfly. He does that. He messes with time by accident sometimes. He messes with time just by talking to someone differently, by befriending someone, by altering someone's mindset. He changes a whole timeline, and he has to now jump into worlds to try to figure out how to fix it, how to keep people alive now because they're dying off because of this. It is a very interesting story. One that, I know it's complex. I know sometimes it feels a little boring in the beginning. I know that's definitely one of the issues a lot of people have with it. But if you're willing to kind of invest yourself in the show, if you're, like I said, willing to allow the show to build around you, and willing to kind of give yourself to the show and make sure you fully understand what the hell is going on and what the characters are all about, you'll notice that every character also, like I said before with one of my earlier reviews of something, every character has a purpose. And that's very rare for a show. You have no idea how rare it is for a show. None of these characters on the screen right here don't have a purpose of some form. They all are very important. They all do something that causes a whole shift in the whole story. And at one point or another, characters fall in love with one another. It's very well done. And I feel that this show is so so amazing. It's so different. It's so unique that I've watched it. This is another show I've seen maybe like 8 or 9 times. I've seen this with my parents before. I've seen this with myself, obviously. I've seen this with friends. I've seen this with my best friend a whole bunch of times. This is a show you need to watch at least once. And you know what? Save your judgment for something with an open mind. Like, watch a show with an open mind. Don't go into it knowing a lot about it. Don't go into knowing how the story ends or how the concepts go, of course. Go into it with a blank slate and go, I'm going to give this show a shot, and you will find that this show is worth every single moment. It's 24 episodes long. It has an OVA. It has a movie out. You don't have to watch those if you don't want to. I mean, they're great in their own right, but still, you don't have to. This is a show that you just watch the bare minimum of it. You actually watch the show itself, and you will find that you love this show. If you really, really are into fantasy slash sci-fi concepts, because I know it's weird to say fantasy because you think, oh, that can't be right. I mean, this is sci-fi, right? But if you think about it, this is a very fantastical version of sci-fi. Sci-fi already is a very, a very loose word because you think, okay, science fiction, stuff like that. But this is a kind of caricature of science fiction in many ways, with characters doing stuff that even in sci-fi you don't see too often. So I do consider it sometimes a fantasy story in many ways. But I also feel that it is definitely, of course, at a heart sci-fi type show. And if you want a good, show that's sci-fi, if you want something that has something that's very different, some likable characters, a great opening and ending song, great music in general, Steins Gate, you have to watch. Halfway point, folks. Number 5, Shuffle. Now, Shuffle is, yes, a harem show, and you probably are like, wait, what? Why is the harem higher than a lot of other shows? I don't. What? This is crazy. Shuffle is one of those harem shows that I will feel and say to this date that there's only one other show that comes close to beating it at times, but it won't be on the list because of the fact that it's still not like a placeholder in my heart. More so, that's Fruit Grisaya. Fruit Grisaya I love. I tell a lot of people it's one of the greatest harem anime out there. But Shuffle is still, to me, the greatest harem anime. And for the reasons that, this is a show that is not all about, let's have a stupid main protagonist get with like a whole bunch of girls and then end the show on a stupid note. No, he actually chooses a girl at the end of the show. And guess what? The characters in the show are all over the place. Like, you have different characters for everything. You have a girl that's crazy. You have a girl that's really super in love with them and doesn't get what she wants and then goes crazy. You have another girl that, okay, you know what? I think about a lot of the girls in the show are crazy. But it's an awesome show. Like, Shuffle I've seen also a dozen times. And the thing is that it is one of those shows that it really blows your mind because harem anime, when you think of it, you think, oh, okay, dumb protagonist, check. Dumb story, check. A lot of fan service, check. Shuffle, it doesn't have a dumb character. The main character, Rin, is actually pretty smart for the most part. He gets involved in some dumb situations because he's still, immature and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is that those situations are kind of what causes him around him to become older and also more mature. Like, those things shape him into a better character as the series progresses. Now, one thing I love about Shuffle, though, is I love all the different girls. I love how they're done in retrospect to him as a character. I do like that he actually tries to date all the girls. He tries to go and tries to see what makes them so special. Do they hold a place in his heart? And ironically enough, one of the girls he chooses you did not see coming. You're like, oh shit, that's the girl he chooses? Wow, I didn't see that coming. But the thing is that I love Shuffle because it has everything in terms of like romance. It has comedy. It has a dark, mature theme at one point. It's a very weird show because it switches themes midway through. Like, the very first half is like all harem stuff. You have the fan service occasionally. It's not done like in a stupid way. Like, you have fan service, but you have fan service only once in a blue moon. You're not going to see panty shots every 10 seconds. You're not going to see boob shots or stuff like that every couple of minutes. No, you're going to see that like once in a blue moon of an episode. Maybe once in a while an episode. Maybe sometimes you will see 2 episodes, 3 episodes pass with no fan service at all. But Shuffle does something where at the halfway point switches gears, and even the weird loading type thing, like where it's supposed to be the infomercial break, to allow commercials in Japan to go in air. Even during that, you notice that there's a shift in the picture, and when you see that shift, you should know, oh shit, this story is about to change, because the whole story does this. It snaps and changes directly on you, and you're like, whoa, what happened to the characters that I knew and loved? Like, they're different now all of a sudden slightly. They're more mature. These characters grew up, and that's something that's very rare to show, to see characters actually mature and age as time progresses. I mean, these are high school students, of course, obviously, but they actually become more and more mature as the series progresses. I love every second that I get to watch this show, and I love watching the show over and over again. Definitely recommend checking out Shuffle. You won't feel bad about it, trust me. Number 4, Phantom, Requiem for the Phantom. Now, I'll say this right now. This show is not without its flaws. I will say that to anyone. I always tell people going into this, do not expect this show because it's so high up on my list to be a perfect show by any means. It's a perfect show for me because I've always enjoyed watching this show over and over again. I've seen this show maybe like 6 or 7 times also. But the thing is that this show is definitely has some. It does definitely has issues. I'll say that right now. You know, there's one arc that there's like 3 episodes I hate, but I also understand why they did those episodes and why they had to do those episodes. It has a recap in it, which I always tell people I hate when a show that's only like 20 episodes has a recap in it. But even with those flaws, you can go to Mal right now and see that I gave this show the perfect score, 10 out of 10. And the reasons for that is not because it's biased, like, oh, I'm going to give the show. It really, there's no bias for me. I love this show because I love it. Okay, actually, realistically, that is a kind of bias if you think about it. But I love this show because I think it does a kind of, I want to say, like, assassin type movie-esque concept very differently. Because, I mean, it's very hard to put this in a category. I would consider it maybe like a thriller anime more than anything else. Because our main character, Zwei, his name's actually different in terms of like what his actual name is, but I don't want to spoil that because that would be a big spoiler for the show. He's a regular, ordinary high school student that ends up getting caught into this thing where he is hunted down because he has information about an assassin that tries to attack someone else and kills that person in front of him, and he runs off. And another assassin named Ein stops him, knocks him out, and brings him to get his mind erased. And when his mind has been erased, he forgets everything about himself. He doesn't have any clue of who he is or what's about him, but he still has an instinct inside of him, and that's to fight back to live. And the thing is that very few anime ever explore that concept of what would you give to live. What are you willing to do to survive? And I love that show because it asks that question almost every freaking episode, and that you see, Zwei become a character who starts realizing who he is at one point, and you start realizing that he also realizes he's gone too far down the rabbit hole. He can't worm his way out anymore. He now knows that he is an assassin at heart. He's killed people, he's murdered people, he's killed innocent people, at the same time he's killed people that are not, not good people, bad people in general. But at heart, he is a killer, and he can't go back to his regular lifestyle. And they try, that's the part I think I don't like too much, is that they try to show what his life would be like if it was normal. And, it's hit or miss in that sequence. I'll tell you that right now. I do have issues with it. But you have to see it because it's important to realize he can't go back to normal. It's at that point now, he's too far down into the world of the assassin. He can't come back out of it. And I think that's why I always forgive that sequence. I'm like, I hate this sequence going in. I tell people, every person I've ever talked to that I recommend this show to, I always tell them, listen, episodes like 17 or 18 around that, you're not going to like too much, I'll be honest with you. But if you think about it, you'll understand, it's necessary. And then I've had people tell me, yeah, I understand why. And some people agree with me, they don't like it, but they also understand why. I've had most people that I recommend the show to love the show. I've only had maybe 1 or 2 people ever said they don't like it, and it's because maybe they don't like the kind of concept of the assassin and all that. I had one person dislike the ending. I love the ending personally, but he said he didn't like the ending. I think the ending's so fitting for these characters. But great animation, great storytelling, great characters, great music. You will find that Phantom Requiem for the Phantom is an awesome show. Definitely go check it out. Number 3, Bakemonogatari. Now, Bakemonogatari is definitely not everyone's cup of tea. This is something that I am super biased about. Like, I know this show will piss people off. I've had a whole bunch of people go, this is so boring. I like the first season more than the rest of the seasons and all that. I'll tell you right now, I've watched almost all of Bakemonogatari in terms of I've watched the whole main series. I've watched up to everything recently. The last season, which is more so like these kind of side episodes, which I really don't consider lore because it's like more side stories. That I have not seen in its entirety yet because they're like only 12 minutes long each, but they're more. I'm thinking they're like more OVA type stories than anything else. But in terms of everything that's supposed to be of the main story, I've seen it all. The movies I haven't watched yet because I read the actual novel for the movie, so I really don't feel like I need to watch the movies yet. But when they come out, I definitely will watch them. I believe the first 3 are out, but they're only on legal sites. I actually kind of want to buy them, to be honest, so I'm gonna wait till then. But Bakemonogatari is a very odd show to give to people in terms of like how to explain it to people. Because at heart, it's a harem, and at heart, it's not. Because at the same time, the main character does fall in love with one girl, and that's his girlfriend for the whole show. Other girls like him and kind of try to worm their way into his life, but at the same time, he pushes them away because, of course, he has a girlfriend who's a very big tsundere, who I consider one of my top waifus of all time, to be honest with you. But it's definitely one of those shows that I can't ever explain to people of why 100% I like it. I think for me, I've always found enjoyment out of every single episode that I've seen. And every episode has some great narrative. I love the main character Araragi. I think I love how all the girls have something very interesting to bring to the story. I love the supernatural elements. I love the animation. Shaft did an amazing job with the animation for the show. Um, but to me, I always say that this show is just for me special because I thought it was so different. But I love how different it is because I love narration. I don't mind narration in anime. I love when they talk, and I know a lot of people have issues, but I love reading, so I have no issue reading for a long time. But I think I love that the show is never trying to be something too serious. It always kind of goes into a realm that it's sometimes serious, but more so, even when it's like dark serious, it still makes something lighthearted out of it. For example, this is one thing I always tell people why I love the show. So Araragi's girlfriend, who I'm not gonna say who it is, but it's pretty obvious if you watch the first like episode. Um, his girlfriend at one time meets someone who's like essentially a god, and she is gonna be killing Araragi at one point after graduation. So what his girlfriend does, this is Senju Gahara, by the way. I'm just gonna say her name because you're gonna realize it after the first episode, anyways. If you watch the show, Senju Gahara goes up to this god. I'm not gonna say who the god is though, because that's spoiling the whole thing. And she goes up and she goes, you know what? Listen, I want to at least graduate high school with Araragi. I want to be able to date him up to that point. And I want you to keep him alive up to that point because we're graduating soon. You can go there, kill him after that. I don't care. But until that point, you can't. If you do kill him before that point, I will come down and kill you. And I don't care if I die in the process, but I will find a way to kill you. This is a normal girl with no powers whatsoever going up to a god who has the ability to destroy everything around her in a flash and tells her that she's gonna kill her if she messes with her boyfriend. How awesome is that? Like, what do you see in shows that ever happens? I've never seen that. And I have a huge, you can't see it because you don't see my face right now, but I have a huge smile telling people that because I love that series. I love that season. I love just this whole show. It is a phenomenal show. It has some great animation. Like I said, Shaft really knocked it out of the park with the animation for this. It's got some very questionable scenes sometimes, the questionable episodes, definitely with like his sisters in one episode was really weird and unnecessary, but I kind of love the show because it just never does anything that you can predict. And I love always being on the end of someone not realizing what the hell's going to happen because too often I could watch a show and go, oh, I know what's going to happen next. Oh, I know that's going to happen now. Oh, I know what's about to happen at the end. This show, I've never actually predicted what's going to happen. I never got it right because it's always kind of random. And you can get like, of course, you can predict like to a point what's going to happen in terms of like a character surviving or something like that. You can predict that obviously, but you can't predict on how they're going to survive or what's going to happen exactly because this show doesn't do that normally. I mean, the main character is technically a vampire, yet really rarely ever acts like a vampire. There's only a few times that he ever does things that's really cool. And one episode where he does like all of a sudden go into super rage mode, he gets like his ass beat in 2 seconds flat after doing that. It's awesome. That's why for me, Bakuman will always be one of those shows that I feel is definitely worth my top 3 spot. Number 2, Clannad. Yeah, the title show that used to always be my top 1. Like this used to be for the longest time, I think for years and years and years and years, this has been my number 1 anime. Has finally dropped to 2nd place. And of course, many of you already know what is going to be in 1st place for me. But Clannad is an amazing show. I say Clannad, I also say Clannad because it's technically the same thing, but I always switch it back and forth, and so I do apologize for that in advance. But the whole concept, I mean, it doesn't need very much of an introduction. It's a very easy to explain story of a romance that has some dark tones, dark moods. It has comedy. It has characters that you fall in love with. It has arcs that revolve around different characters and their stories and what the main character has to do for them to, keep them healthy and survive. There's what if stories that show like what if he would have ended up with this girl instead, or what if he would have ended up with this girl instead. But at heart, this is a romance story through and through. It is one of the beautiful anime I've ever seen. The most beautiful anime I've ever seen. I think I said that incorrectly when I just said that, but I do apologize. I mean, this is a long video, so of course I'm gonna have probably some cuts, and I'm probably gonna have some stuff that I have to edit, but it's okay. But Clannad is something that I've always watched and always enjoy watching. I couldn't wait to buy this. When I bought this on Blu-ray, I was so happy. I rewatched it. I remember that I watched this with my friends. I've watched this by myself, of course, many times. I've seen the English dub. I've seen the subtitles for it. I will say that I feel like I love the English dub more for the show than I do with the Japanese dub, but it's definitely not like a big deal if I watch either one, no matter what. But I'll say this right now. Clannad is one of those shows that it deserves to be watched at least once by someone. Because I know a lot of people say that they try to watch the first season and they don't like the first season. Don't just watch the first season. You can't just watch the first season. I know that's very rare to say with a show, like, oh, well, isn't that kind of hypocritical to say you love a show, but the first season's the weaker one? Yeah, it is. But at the same time, I don't think the first season's weaker. I'm just saying I know people say that all the time. But after story is where the story really picks up pace. And you see a romance story go into a place that's not really ventured too often in. And I love every moment of the show. I think that I've cried a whole bunch of times with this show. I've maybe cried at every point, that's every epic moment that happens on screen. I love the main characters. I love Toya. I love Nagisa, of course, obviously. She's great. But, you know, I always find that this show always brings a smile on my face and always makes me go, wow, this is an anime that's been done right. Of course, obviously, it's a 10 out of 10 anime, but this is a show that I know some people go, oh, this is the reason I don't like it, you know, big eyes or something like that. Look beyond that. Look beyond the art if you don't like the art, and look at the story that's being presented, and you'll realize, wow, what the hell beats this show? And then you'll realize that there is one show, for me at least, that beats it, and it's not by much, mind you, but it does beat it. We're going on to number 1. And now for number 1, ReZero. Yeah, I don't think anyone's really surprised that ReZero is my top anime at this point. ReZero did something that I've never seen before ever happen to me. You know, this is a show that I consider the underdog of a show. I remember everyone and their mothers, and I don't care who you are. You might be saying, oh, I defended ReZero. No, I'd be surprised if you really did. ReZero, when it first was announced as a show that's like, oh, some young man ventures into a new world and all of a sudden is like trying to fight his way through, and then he dies and has to repeat certain things over and over again, etc. And people were like, oh, that sounds so like cliche and so generic. Oh, I've seen that type of show before, whatever. And then I watched how people watched the first couple episodes and went, oh my god. And I was with you guys. I was with everyone there because I was so blown away by this show when it actually did what it did. I was like, this show is fucking amazing. It is so amazing. To watch every episode, to see every episode end, and you go, wait, that's it? No, what happened? What happens next? Oh my god, what the hell? Another cliffhanger. This show is cliffhanger king. I've never seen a show that makes me give a shit as much as this show does with its cliffhangers. Like, you watch the cliffhanger and go, ah, man, I can't wait till next week. Now I gotta watch it next week. Ah, man, I gotta wait a whole week. Sundays became everyone's day of like, oh, ReZero, we gotta get out to ReZero. Especially YouTube reviewers, like anime reviewers. Sunday was a day that people would go and fly to see who can get out the review first. And I remember a few times, I was lucky enough, I got the review out first. It was only a few times, but for the most part, everyone I knew was trying to get out, like, because they wanted to show how great this show was. And I remember people that even didn't like the show at first and then rewatched it and go, oh my god, this show is so amazing. What was I thinking? You know, what happened? What happened? This show is the butt of every single stupid meme, of course, of obviously I love Amelia when, you know, when Rem says I love Subaru and then he goes I love Amelia. Every single place you saw people making fun of that. You saw that in romance movies, you saw that in terms of like, and I mean not like real life, I mean they took scenes and altered them to have I love Amelia line, but you saw that everywhere. You've seen millions of memes, of course, like Rem Twister. You've seen millions of memes with Subaru doing something stupid with his weird head crooked at one scene or not. You know, you've seen a lot of memes and jokes and gifs and everything else on this because this show is freaking amazing. It is deserving of having all the praise it did. Even months and months after the show aired, people were still making conspiracy theories about the show, making all these kind of theory crafting videos, talking about how this character was doing this for this purpose. You know, it was crazy how people would not let ReZero die. And even now, it's still not dying because people bring it up. And I'm bringing it up now, obviously, in my top 10, anime of all time. But I love this show. I think it's worthy of being my top 1 because I've never seen a show that's really ever pushed Clannad down a slope. Like, I've loved Clannad for so long, to have that on my top spot, to have this derail it. That is so rare. If you want an action-adventure story with a lot of fantasy elements that's really different, with a character that you'll fall in love with because he's so badass that at times you want to hit him in the face because he's an idiot, you want to fall in love with a whole bunch of girls that come into play that are very cute and all have these kind of weird quirks about them, but they're all very unique and different. You cannot do wrong with ReZero. Watch ReZero. At least watch some of ReZero. Don't be one of those people who says I think ReZero is trash and doesn't even watch 1 or 2 episodes. You know who you are out there for those people. Anyways, guys and girls, this is the longest video I think I've done in a long time, so I do apologize for that. But you guys always wanted me to do a very top 10, favorite anime type video, and you wanted me to always go in depth with them. So this is the best I could do for you guys and girls. Hopefully you enjoyed it. As always, if you did, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video. You know the whole nine. I will talk to you guys later. Have a blessed day, everyone. Bye-bye.